Super excited. Last night we had our second scrimmage. By NCAA rules, we're only allowed 2 of those, so we knew there was a lot going into last night. Had full use of coach to player, had sideline technology up and running for the second time. We've obviously made some changes because of the rules. All right, we're actually using the game day locker room of old. We're not using the Smith Center at halftime anymore, so we've kind of gotten used to that transition. Did that last spring as well as our first scrimmage, second scrimmage. Really kind of took a different approach to the game last night as far as we kind of had a declared group of ones that really went back and forth during the course of the game, one offense to one defense, one special teams, converted back and forth throughout the first half, involved a second unit with special teams in the second half so that our coaches could leave the field. So if our one offense was out there going against the defense, that when they came off the field, then those coaches could go to the sideline and work communication, sideline technology with our one offense that just came off, because obviously during the course of a game, everything is one way. So a lot of really good prep work last night, really good execution. Got over 150 plays of really good work. Stayed injury free, which was a huge deal, and like going into really our last 2 weeks, last week and a half, because we had a Thursday night game where our team is physically, but also mentally, had some really good examples of execution last night. So excited about that. Also announced captains last night. Really don't know where those are always go. One of the things I've done as a head coach, some teams take different approaches. We've always been player selected, so our players vote on it. We kind of have a method that we used. Offensive players vote for offense and defense. Defense votes for our mainly defense, but they get a crossover vote, and have those 6 players represent us. Really have everything. I think first time in my career I think we have 4 guys with remaining eligibility after this year, so 4 underclassmen captains. I think in college football, it's kind of the way it is. Offensively, Kreutz had by far the most votes on the offensive side, was a guy that ran away with it. He has great presence, great awareness. Really excited to have him in that role. His growth from a year ago to this year is very apparent. And then Pat Bryant offensively too, just speaks volumes. I think last year he was in a room with Casey and Isaiah, and since January a year ago, to have him step forward and put himself in that position is pretty impressive. And then a guy that I wasn't surprised with when we saw the ballots, just Tanner Arkin is a guy that goes about his business. Some coaches said some things about him in front of the team in a team meeting that was kind of a unscripted view of what Tanner is, and our players all resonated with it. I think that might have actually been a big part in that. And then defensively, the biggest vote getter, Dylan Rosiak, a multi-year starter, a guy that plays every snap like it's his last. Just super impressed with him to get on the Buckus Award list earlier in the day. I always put up whenever our guys are nominated for national awards, I put the video graphic that Bret and his staff puts out, and just to see the reaction from our guys for that was probably a good indication of what was coming. And then defensively, we had the next 2 guys, Seth Coleman and Miles Scott. Both those guys literally almost dead even. I think 2 different stories, right? Seth Coleman's in his 6th year, a guy who was recruited by the original staff and has transitioned to a really good player for us. And Miles Scott came in as a non-scholarship player on the other side of the ball, has now positioned himself as, in my opinion, one of the better players, not only in our team, but hopefully in his conference, and represents everything good. So excited about the leadership from that group. We also have a leadership council that is a big part of that. And then, I think guys just naturally develop leadership as they go through things. And the good news was also a lot of other votes from other people. Health-wise, Matt Bailey, we kept him out a little bit, but he's full go rodeo heading into the week. Henry Boyer was out concussion protocol. He's back in it. Won't have any issues. Last night, a couple things, soft tissue, but nothing extreme, nothing really big. So James Kreutz is 100% clear. Josh Kreutz is still coming back. To expect to have him back sometime next week. And other than that, we should be good to go.
With Matt Bailey, is that a maintenance thing, or is it something new? It is. Okay.
Yeah, he back in maybe week 1 or week 2 had kind of a soft tissue, re-aggravated it, and then just where he was strength-wise, we just didn't want to put him in a position to go out there unless he was full strength. So he was actually cleared. We just pulled him out of it, and then the reason he was held out is we still want him. He does, like when we do any Eastern Illinois or Kansas prep work, he stays involved with that, but he's not fully engaged in all the other activities. Plus, I'm trying to develop some depth. That position behind him is something that's really wide open. Guy last night, Sabor Kareem really had a really good scrimmage, and then Matt Grossetich was actually one of our MVPs on defense that had a nice play, nice interception, so a lot of really good stuff.
That's a good segue into my net. Like this depth at safety, we know Miles, we know Matt, but what are you seeing behind those guys?
Probably three guys jump out. Matt Grossetich for sure. Sabor really kind of backing up Matt Bailey, but a different skill set. CJ is probably a guy that has played himself in that role. Ben Clausen, another guy that has been there. Demetrius Hill also had his probably best week last week. And I would say there's probably 6 guys that are kind of vying for those 4 spots. But really like that. And then at corner, Xavier Scott playing a corner. Obviously, Caleb Patterson has got the most time in our program. But you look at Brooks, like he's got a number of playing experience even though they weren't here. Torrey Cox, same thing, a lot of playing experience even though they wasn't here. And then a guy that's really probably been impressive, Jaheim Clark, coming back from where he carried over last spring to where he is this fall has been pretty impressive.
Coach, during your time as a head coach, have you seen guys be named captain and kind of just take off beyond what you probably thought they could do? You know what I mean? Kind of spark something. You have stories about guys that really loved being that kind of respect from their teammates.
Yeah, I think it plays, and then I know there's some of that released on the social. I don't know if the social media things out there. I gave all those guys a chance to speak afterwards.
Okay.
And I think it's heartfelt. I did say I gave these guys a week warning that we were going to vote for them on a certain day. I told them, because I think it's a lot of thought. I want guys not to just come in. I said it's not a popularity contest. It's not the best player. It's not the oldest player. It's about who represents who we are and what we are. And I probably, to be honest, have seen kind of both worlds, right? I've seen guys that maybe weren't expected to be captain have been voted and it raises them to a different level, or guys that maybe expected to be captain and weren't, and it raises them to another level as well just because they feel they got more to prove. So it's probably a push depending on the kid, but it's always neat to see their reactions.
What's Donovan Leary's kind of deal?
Yeah, Donovan, no issue, no. He just really got a sore arm. And what I wanted him to see was I wanted him to be, going 2 weeks into the game is about, and so he was totally cleared, fully cleared. Just sat down with him and made a decision to rest 4 days. We thought we could get a window. So even today, we can't go. So of these next 4 days, there's 2 days on and 2 days off. So we kind of use guys in a maintenance plan to try and get guys, whether it's a quarterback. We've done the same thing with D lineman, O lineman. If somebody's got something that's bothering them a little bit, even though they're fully cleared, I think it's important to let those guys recover and get ready for a full season and trying to limp through it.
On that note, though, are you happy with what you're seeing out of Kirkland and Trey when they've been able to get some of those reps?
Well, Luke had his best performance since I've been here last night. I went, I think he was 21 of 26, if I'm not mistaken, or 21 of 25. Kirkland had his best performance by far in the time that he's been here, really. And he, for the most part, was going against stiffer competition. He was going against our one defense, so he was out there and he did a really, really nice job of managing the game, handling it and understanding where the ball needed to go, avoiding negative plays, everything. Trey Petty was also very impressive last night. So I think those two guys in general took a step forward. But again, I've said it before, going back to last spring, I like this QB room. It's the most talent we've ever returned since I've been here as far as across the board. So as long as they keep making steps forward and keep getting better at the things that we ask them to, I think it's all good.
Those completions go to pass catchers. How did they look?
Well, they didn't go to non-pass catchers.
Yeah.
What do you mean? Just
did anybody stand out?
Wide receiver, running with Luke and that crew, right? You had obviously PB, Zakari, Kanari, Wilcher, Malik Elzy, Colin Dixon, and Capka Jones. So we had about 5-6 guys rolling at the wide receiver position, and probably the 2 plays that stood out to me were a long hit to Colin Dixon. Zakari had a nice couple plays. Pat always has a couple in there. Had a couple nice intermediate routes on early downs to a bunch of guys. Tanner Arkin had a nice couple plays, and then our running backs caught the ball extremely well. So I think the big thing for us is to distribute. It's not just going to go-to guys that people that traditionally get looked at and defended. I think it's now a little bit more broad-based approach, and I'm really excited about that wide receiver room. I've said it before. I think that group continues to grow.
How's the kicker competition? How's David looking? What can he take? I say competition. You can correct me if I'm
David.
wrong. And then how's he looking from last season?
Yeah, David probably in the last, I would say 10 days has been kicking the ball extremely well. Chow has also come in and done very well. Obviously, the A&M transfer, he's a very accurate long hitter. Breezy has been breezy. So as far as the kicking, now we've done very little live kickoff stuff, but they've hit the ball in live team situations, so we can chart that and mark that. But David and Chow especially, those two guys got big legs, very accurate. They've been almost identical in the field goal race, so we got a good battle going on there. And then punter, Hughes been hitting the ball extremely well. But case in point, even like what he mentioned with Donovan, Hughes had a little bit of a sore soft tissue, so I've seen this guy kick a lot of good balls for us, or punt a lot of good balls, so we just kind of backed him off, literally took him out of practice for about a 4-day window, let him recover, and went out and hit the ball extremely well last night.
Did last night solidify at all to you who you want the defensive green dot to be in a couple of weeks, or are you still kind of trying to work that out?
No, I think the green dot by position, we know what we're doing, but who's in there depends on what scheme and what we're doing. So the rule reads you can only have one on the field, so it really, but we'll actually have 10 helmets that have green dots on them on Saturday, so you can literally go put one in the box, the next guy out goes. Could be situationally, it could be depending on the game plan, right? There'll be a lot of guys that maybe do things perimeter that we want to have someone on the big picture. You could play against teams that play in a box, you might want more of it be in dot, so I don't think there's a set person that becomes that by nature. That's not how the NFL works. That's how most teams play it.
Four of the 6 guys named captain are juniors.
Yeah.
Most of the names you've just listed off here are juniors. It's very junior heavy. Is there anything different about coaching a junior heavy roster? Like, seems like 3 times the juniors as seniors kind of thing.
Yeah, I think a little bit. Still, these guys are all COVID, right? Like technically, we got quite a few guys that wouldn't be seniors that weren't COVID. We got guys that are juniors because of COVID, however you want to say it. I look at J.C. Davis, who, comes to us. He's a 2-for-1, so he technically has 2 years to play 1, but obviously he's a starting tackle for us. But it's just college football, I think, right now. I appreciate the question. I understand the numbers, but I do like players that I've had a lot of experience with, right? And then the next best thing is if you don't have a guy returning from your roster that has a lot of experience, is to get someone in your roster that has a lot of experience. And I think that's what we've added. Like, Zakari's been a true joy. Just he's got a lot of football knowledge and he understands things. And obviously had a previous tie-in with Barry, but J.C. Davis' experience, Melvin Priestley from scrimmage 1 to scrimmage 2 was unbelievable last night. Just his overall demeanor, approach, nature. Even though they're young, Aiden Lawfrey's been through it. He's been through 2 springs and 2 falls with us now. He's really had an impressive camp last night. Josh McCray ran for X number of over 700 yards his freshman year, and then had 2 kind of season ending. But even though he hasn't had a lot of playing experience, he's been in our program a long time. So really impressed with him. But yeah, I think it's more about time with you. But if not with you, have they had it somewhere else, and how well do they adjust into you? Tanner Arkin here's a guy that, I think. I know we beat some people out, in the recruiting process, but he wasn't a highly portal acquisition. And I tell you, there'd be a lot of people who'd like to have Tanner Arkin on their team right now. He's just very, very, the things we always talk about, tough, smart, dependable. And for us, he brings tremendous value, not just offensively, but in quite a few phases of the kicking game as well.
Do you have all 10 of your helmets now? You said you only got, 7?
Yeah, we got them all now. Okay. Yesterday we were full functionality for sideline technology, coach to player communication, and then also we went into the locker room at halftime, so our guys were using, the iPads at halftime, which is such a different game, right? There's so many things that we're preparing for this year in college football. I don't think the outside world realizes it's such a different world. Like one of my coaches who up in the box, who's been a head coach, like he's literally, in between series, he's watching every play. And you get to watch every call, right, made and the result of it, right? So you get to see exacting moments on how people are aligned, what they're doing. There's also, that opens up a whole different thing, right? So for the first time in college football, whenever you have a negative play happen on Saturday, right, like you'll get to watch in film on Sunday and you're like, ooh, we got away with one here, or maybe they didn't come back and get this, maybe they didn't see it. Like you're literally going to have the ability to see that 30 seconds later, right? And the value, or however you want to say it, on the flip side of it, if it's a negative thing towards us, to know that our opponent is going to see that immediately, if people are capitalized on that, is a really, really big deal.
Barry talks about with the communication part, just maybe finding a sweet spot where between talking too much and not talking enough. With the other technology, like how do you want to approach that? Maybe showing too much or not showing enough?
Well, I think it's a feel. I'm glad we had 2, and we're actually going to do it next week on the mock game as well. every team is allowed 2. We're doing a 3, and then we do it every day at practice. We're trying to maximize it, and I think even Barry, from scrimmage 1 to scrimmage 2, he's not going to say everything to you guys, but I witnessed it last night, right? Like he was just much better in his understanding of when that 15 second was going to come in. We had a way of signaling when that's going to happen to him, which really helped him out, right? And then Luke efficiently operated a lot better. And then I think there's all kinds of gamesmanship within the game, knowing like a lot of times when you come from the sideline, it's 40 seconds, but a lot of times it's 25, right? So when you come from the sideline at 25 seconds, to know you only have 10 seconds is a big deal, right? Versus 25, it's at 40. So there's a huge deal there. And the process just comes through working. I'm glad we sent them to pro camps. We talked to coordinators that had been first-year coordinators in the transition they went to. So I think a lot of recon that we did before is hopefully going to pay dividends for us.
Coach, you have a lot of experienced transfers in there. Anybody get votes for captain amongst those? That group?
Well, those were the 3 on offense and the 3 on defense. But it's interesting you say that. So the next vote getters on offense were Luke, the next guy. After Luke was Aiden Lawfrey, who's not a transfer. It was Luke, Aiden Lawfrey, and there was Zy Chrysler. So Zy and Luke, even though one was a junior college, one was those were our next 2 big. And then yes, on defense, T-Rob was our next, right? Transfer. Briggs was our next transfer. Xavier Scott was our next, and then Gabe Ackus, right? So who's only in his 3rd year in our program. So I mean, I don't think guys. It's even like, when I see Tanner Arkin, like I don't think of him as a transfer, right? Because this is our 3rd week, basically 5th semester. T-Rod, like there's nobody, in my opinion, that's had as big a jump from a year ago to where we are right now than T-Rod Edwards. And I think it's, even though he was a Northwestern transfer, I don't really ever see it that way anymore. So I think it's kind of to Robert's point, it's just kind of the way college football is right now. And a lot of times we'll be sitting in a meeting and I'm like, God, what year is he? Is he like I say it all the time? Like I literally had it again this morning. Like what year and what does he have remaining? Because if you got a guy that's dealing with a possible position change, like how many years could he try this other position? Everything from A to Z. So it's just and then next year we're going to go to a roster of 105, right? So we've done some things even this camp where we're servicing one another, very similar to what we did last night. So a little NFL perspective on. Your team is out there performing what you want them to do offensively and defensively, but how do I get the team that's going against them the best personnel to go against, right? And I go back, whether I watched Tom Brady run a look team offense or if I was watching some of our best defensive players go against our offense on a defensive look team, like that's the model that's coming down, and it's a byproduct of that.
My understanding, guys, said you used the locker room in the stadium. Like, what was the locker room thing you opened up talking about? Maybe not using the Smith Center?
Ever since I've come here, we've always used the Smith Center. So one of the great advantages of that was you get dressed in the locker room you've been every day, right? But because sideline technology has changed and you could take it in the locker room, then I made a decision. We're no longer, we'll use the Smith Center. So when we come over here on game day, we'll get dropped off right here. We always do a little walk. We'll go in Smith Center, and then whenever, let's say our players are taking the field at an hour out from kickoff, they'll now leave an hour and 10 out. They'll walk to the game day locker room, which I don't know what that is called. It's what they used to use, right? And drop off whatever they want here. They'll go down on the field, and then after pregame, they'll go to that locker room, go through half, and they'll go to that locker room at halftime, and then we'll come back up here. But our player, especially I would say anybody in the 250 club or higher, which includes me, right? Like it's like you don't have all the traffic. We literally, in my opinion, probably had 5 minutes. It's a 20-minute halftime. We probably take 2 to 2.5 minutes coming and going. So it was already then so now it takes literally 45 seconds to get off the field to our locker room. So and now you have that technology and it's smaller, right? We won't have, if we dress 100 players, we would never have 100 in that one. We'll only have the 75 travel. So it's just a lot more efficient way, I think, to use it. And then there's a whole area that our coaches now have for offense, defense. So good news is it's going to be here for all of our home games. Bad news is on the road you don't have near as much luxury as you do have here at home.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.